Hey, this is Soma79 with a special announcement. My new Mega Mix is up. My MF Doom Mega Mix, Oxidation Moons Day, is now available. Go to www.soma79.com/doom to check it out. It's a 30-minute mix that I did of MF Doom raps over my own beats. I really enjoy it. I hope you really enjoy it. So check it out. Tell a friend. Peace. Hey, welcome to the Articulate Ox podcast. I'm your host, Soma79. Thank you so much for joining me today. This is a great episode. My guest is, hey, welcome to the newest episode of the Articulate Ox podcast. I am your host, Soma79. Thank you so much for joining me. You may remember me from this same outfit and this same couch and the same everything from last week, because this is part 2 of my interview with the author of Most Dope, The Extraordinary Life of Mac Miller. His name is Paul Cantor. If you enjoyed the first week's episode, that's probably why you're back. And if you missed the first week's episode, then go back and check it out. It is available. I really enjoyed my conversation with Paul. He's welcome back on the podcast anytime. I feel like him and I could talk hip-hop forever, and it's a real joy to talk to somebody who's, puts thought into it the way that I do, from a critical perspective, from just a fan perspective. And I don't know, I'm glad there's people out there like Paul. So check out his book, Most Dope, The Extraordinary Life of Mac Miller by Paul Cantor. And while you're at it, check out some of my music. Go to soma79.bandcamp.com. You can find some of my music, some stickers. I'll be adding some new stuff there soon. I'll have CDs and vinyl and all that good stuff. I have my old album on CD there, so you can check that out. But yeah, thank you everybody for joining me, and enjoy the episode with Paul Cantor. Peace.
Meet Ann with wings clipped, quick to flip manuscripts, cause her man went from damaged kid to damn he's rich, but she still can't stand the way he manages to never put nickels in the can for the cancer kid.
So in terms of like people that you've interviewed, what I saw you interviewed Suge Knight, or
I did, yes. Yeah. Yeah, that was a while back, but I did interview him, yeah.
At what point in his journey was that at?
At the time, that was in 2013. That was actually the first interview he'd done in about 10 years.
Really?
I don't think he had done an interview since he'd come out of prison. There was nothing. And yeah, I was able to interview him, and that was cool. I mean, it was a big deal. The thing about interviews, and a little bit of like all media in general, is that it doesn't. Only very rarely does it stand the test of time, right? It has its moment. You know what I'm saying? And then unless it can be utilized for in some way,
things are more disposable than ever now, it seems.
Yeah. So that interview though had a lot of life. At the time, it was a big interview. Nobody had talked to him in many years. They hadn't really, had nothing from him, right? They didn't, he was a boogeyman basically. Yeah. And I think maybe people were afraid to do it, or I honestly have no idea. Maybe they just didn't try. Maybe he was inaccessible, but I was able to do it. And I know, it's had a life of its own, because I've actually been interviewed about that interview like dozens of times. I've been in like documentaries and stuff based on that interview, and I've had documentarians try to acquire that interview, just because there's so few interviews with him.
Right.
Over the last, 20 years, it's almost nothing, so.
And now is he doing a podcast from jail? Did I make that? I think I heard
he does have a podcast from jail with Dave Mays, from
The Source.
Yeah, from The Source.
Yeah.
And it's cool. I listened to it. I like it.
I gotta check that out.
Yeah, I mean, Suge's he's a fascinating guy, right?
Yes,
I mean,
yeah.
the kind of guy who could be saying absolutely nothing, and you just want to listen to him because, uh, he's just an interesting guy. He has a way of talking. There's also a great documentary that was done on him. I believe it was F. Gary Gray who did a documentary on him. I think it was called American Nightmare.
Yes, I
Um,
think the Cody Rhodes story.
and that was also really good. Um, and yeah, like I mean, he's a fascinating guy. Would love to do a book with him.
Yeah, yeah. So speaking of which, anything that you're working on now that you feel a desire to talk about, or the upcoming projects, or
Nothing that is really public yet. Although I can say there's some people involved with the upcoming Super Bowl that I'm working with on some things,
oh, cool.
book related. Yeah, I don't want to get that specific, but you know, yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and we'll be doing some things, I guess, around the Super Bowl in the book,
Mhm.
because it's such a big moment. And what else? Yeah, I'm just developing a lot of projects, a lot of documentary projects, films, and books. Many of them like in gestation. So as soon as something's really ready, even with the Mac Miller book, we never announced the book. When I was working on it, the book industry likes you to announce things, but I don't really feel like anything is done until it's actually in front of you.
Right.
I'm a somewhat superstitious, about things like that.
Yes, I know what you're saying. Yeah.
So yeah, unless I have like an actual completed copy of something, it doesn't exist.
Especially in entertainment, because it's like anything can go away at any moment. Somebody who your publisher gets a job at a different house, and then they decide all their projects are gone or something.
Exactly. So I'm more so like somebody that likes to speak things into existence. In the sense of like keeping a little bit of a north star in terms of what I plan to do. So, for example, this book, which has been more successful than I really thought it would be. Um, my expectations for it were pretty low. Just not because I have low expectations of myself, but just I just didn't really know what the response was going to be to it.
Right.
Um, you know, I, I really, it's hard for me to tell, when somebody passes away and there's like a big boom of interest, if they'll still be interested.
Right.
Um, and
Or
it's
even
like
if
that
the
with,
fans are readers, it's like there's some artists who the fans just aren't the people going to pick up a book, so it's like the book may never exist, or like whether people go,
I
no,
mean,
I'll wait for the documentary.
yeah, I mean, one of the great things about this book, um, that has been really, interesting to see is I feel like a lot of people who maybe aren't that into books have been exposed to it.
Yeah.
And then also there's a lot of people who are not necessarily into music or hip hop or really anything. Like they maybe just read like history. I literally have like talked to like people who are 85 years old, and they've been like, this book was something that my son gave to his son, so my grandson, you know, but I read it,
Hmm.
you know. People's fathers, have told me they've, read it. Um, it's really hit like a really broad cross section of readers.
Right. I mean,
Um,
even as just like, and we've all dealt with a lot of us addiction ourselves, and a lot of us addiction in our families, and it's like if you read the book just on that level, there's a very powerful narrative. Like even
yeah,
if you were never to listen to a Mac Miller song, there's something to be gained from just reading that,
yes,
especially in the
and
beautiful
even
way you've written it.
yeah, even some of that stuff. I tried to, um, you know, It's a little bit when you're doing a book. There's a little bit of like of how much of the cards you're going to show, right? And you're a little bit like a filmmaker in some way, right? Alfred Hitchcock, right? I mean, of course, he's very famous for not really showing so much
Right.
gore, right? The
Letting
horror,
the mind fill it in, you know.
right? The horror is off screen.
Right.
You're filling it in with your imagination. Now, we live in a generation where people want to see everything, right? We'll watch ISIS cut someone's head off,
Right.
right? Or Hamas, shoot a bunch of Jews in the face,
Right.
or
We'll read about Vince McMahon like taking a dump on somebody, and you're
yeah,
just like, what?
exactly. But what I've always believed is that shock doesn't travel, right? It has a short shelf life. It's like you get
Yeah,
shocked
doesn't
and you
age
don't say,
well.
"Hey, you gotta see this."
Well, just look at like
Usually,
how like kind of when Eminem came out, like Marilyn Manson, his shock just dropped. It's like it seems like because once someone else outshocks you, your shock stock drops. You
you're
know.
that dude. That's fucking deep. Your shock
No, I'm
stop
glad I got that
drops.
on record. It.
Yeah, that is deep. Your shut. Like yeah,
That's
you're
going in
right.
a song.
You're absolutely right though, and I never really have thought about that in the context of America. I mean, I don't know. Do people go back and listen to Marilyn Manson? Like that stuff doesn't age well.
No,
You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? It doesn't age well. So even with the addiction stuff, the truth is there's a lot more that was not in the book. That I kind of kept out of it. There was, it was pretty messy, with a lot of details that I kind of just sort of was like, yeah, we can show this without showing it.
right.
You can kind of use your imagination to understand what was going on, and that type of shit.
You captured one really beautiful moment that I think really summed up addiction, and it was I forget the exact details, but I believe he was drinking lean around some pro basketball players, and he just kind of referred to it casually as like liquid heroin, and I'm sorry if I'm getting the details wrong, but like and then kind of not realizing that like a professional basketball player is probably like not putting that into his. It's like I think that moment like really to me captured like what addiction looks like to a lot of people. Just being the slightly off thing that nobody's going to say anything about, but everybody kind of sees, you know?
Yeah, that story. Yeah, that was one where you kind of see like what's going on, which is like this is somebody who's like thinks this is cool,
Right.
right? When you're in when you're in early drug usage stage, you're still in the like I'm cool because I'm doing this and this is edgy,
Right.
right? And like
And those are
I was
words that feel cool in your head, but might not feel cool after you've said them too. And the embarrassment and shame, you know?
totally, and even when I was young and I was like smoking weed, I recognized that I thought it was cool, but nobody else did.
Mhm.
Nobody smoked weed when I was smoking weed, and like I said, I started when I was like 12. You
Right.
know, in fact, those experiences shaped me because as I got older, I stopped smoking weed. Maybe the last time I smoked weed was like 14 or 15. And then I didn't smoke, again, anything until I was in my mid 20s. I went through all of college without smoking anything just because I remember how socially ostracized I was being like a fucking little pothead. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? And
That's what the 90s and stuff were like.
yeah, when nobody was doing that, I was like,
Yeah.
I don't want to feel like that. You know what I'm saying? Like, fuck that.
Then Cypress Hill came along.
Hey, it changed everything, right? Made
Yeah.
everything made you want to be a burnout.
Well,
Funny
just think of
enough,
how many like big name rappers or like even Run DMC were like, we don't smoke weed, and now you find out about like kind of the details of Jam Master Jay's passing, and you're like, well, how do you balance those two? You know?
I mean, now the sad truth is, as much as I'm saying that I was somebody who kind of like went through all of high school, I didn't smoke any weed. All of my friends from high school became burnouts,
Mhm.
right? They either were smoking in high school or when we got out of high school, they were somewhat susceptible to the influence of college. But they were like, fuck it, I'm gonna start smoking weed, and
Yeah.
they got caught up in a lot of shit that I didn't get caught up in because I was exposed to it at a much earlier age,
Yeah.
So, I was like, yeah, I'm good, I already know the kind of people that are associated with this kind of culture of like smoking weed and
Yeah.
selling drugs. You know, I never was like a big, drug dealer or anything like that, but like, I sold drugs when I was like 13, 14 years old, with my brother and other people, you know, all these experiences somewhat that are even in this book. I went through that myself, right? Somebody robbing you for your drugs and all that shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like I know that was like somebody speaking their existence into my own brain, and where I'm like, yeah, been there. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So hearing it was just like, I'm like, yeah, that sounds familiar. You know what I'm saying? Like I know this character, I know this, whatever this person might be feeling,
Mhm.
not totally, but but some element of it.
Yeah. It's funny because it seems like Mac Miller can be so many different things to so many different people. I think that maybe is part of his appeal is that you can kind of almost no matter who you are, I think you can see part of yourself in him. Because it's like obviously you and I come from totally different backgrounds, even though we're around the same age, and like obviously we're exposed to a lot of the same things like culturally, but like we come to him from a totally different perspective, and it seems like it's. And then I think about like some of the females in my life and the way they come to him and things like that. It's just.
Yeah, well, like I said, earlier in the, when we were talking, a lot of it is just, it really is a line that I quote from Prodigy, in the book. It's like I put my lifetime in between the paper's lines. And it's like when somebody does that and they just put it out, you never really know who's gonna relate to it or gravitate to it and who it's gonna connect with. And it really is a matter of just having someone listen to it.
Yeah.
And I think he was definitely a person. I mean, he's got so much music that um, I think there's this one song he has like "Thoughts from a Balcony."
That's one of my favorites. Yeah, I
And
love
I'm
that
just
song.
like, this is like you know what I mean? Like the most accurate representation of the person on the balcony. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like, like it was like that song was like plugged into my head, and it was like taking my thoughts out of my brain and putting it onto paper, but somebody else was doing it,
Yeah.
and I was like, and there was distance between us age wise, right? We have about a 10-year age difference, you know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
it was pretty fascinating. But listen, that's the fucking beauty of, great art and youth culture that is good youth culture, right? Not like dumb youth culture.
Right.
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like where you can't relate to it, where it's like it's just some stupid shit on TikTok, and you're just like, what the fuck is this, right?
Yeah.
Good youth culture is like, somebody made a 3.5 minute song that is their version of their life that is sort of like your life,
Right.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you one more selfish question. I don't know if you have any answer to this, but I'm trying to find answers. I hope we get an answer some point in time soon. The Mac Miller and Madlib album. Did you uncover any information about that? I mean, that feels like something that, I mean, Madlib could just let it sit around forever. But any inside knowledge you learned about that in the process?
None whatsoever.
Damn it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know where
the only,
Doomstalks is or any of that stuff?
the only thing I know is that there were on that particular subject. Even though I'm kind of giving you a little bit of a funny answer to the question,
Yeah.
um, there were many projects that were started with producers, um, and there was like little groups of songs that were made with, packs of beats that were sent to him, or that he might even, got in the studio with, like Pharrell, like Pink Slime. That's like a
Yeah.
actual thing. It exists,
Yep.
Um, it just, these things kind of were thought of on the spot,
Yeah.
but they were never given any real structure to how they would come out.
Because it's
Because
like you're moving on to something else. You're in a different city 2 days later, and it's like you're on to another amazing experience, you know?
yeah, exactly.
And lawyers have to get involved if you want to actually do something with it, and then it's like a whole thing, you know?
Yeah. So that particular project, I I've heard whatever records leaked and shit like that. Um, but I've also heard, like, a bunch of songs that, he did with like High Tech, and different
Ah,
things like that,
that's
and
dope.
you're like, nobody talks about that, right? Probably because High Tech is not out there, talking about it. You know what I'm saying? Um, so there's a lot of that, and my speculation with the Mad Lib thing is that, Mad Lib talks like that about a lot of things, right?
Right. Mad
And-
Villainy too, you know?
exactly, and it might have been one of these things where it was like, yeah, I maybe didn't recognize how much these fans was going to latch on to
Right.
that, what was going on there. But what I will say is, it would be dope if that came out. I mean, like, um, even like his like unreleased catalog is insane,
That's
man.
what I was gonna ask
Like,
you. So what's your knowledge of Mac's unreleased catalog?
I mean, just stuff that people would play me when I was working on the book. There were people that were interviewed for the book who had copies of things. Uh, I suspect that one of the reasons why, this is just a hypothesis. This is not. I don't take my word for it, but this is just my theory. Is that the reason why there has not been a great sum of his music to come out is because it's very difficult keeping track of finding where these things are, right? Because it's spread out on hard drives.
Yeah, I have that problem with my own music. It's
Yeah,
like
it's sort of
and even sometimes finding a computer that's gonna work with it, like this hard drive that's from 2006, you know. It's like
it's on hard drives that people maybe don't have access to. You never even know. Like, I mean, this is just, again, hypothetically
right, that
speaking.
makes sense. Yeah.
He might have had a computer that had a password that they could not unlock, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not inconceivable that that is the case, right? It sounds so basic, but it's probably the reality,
Right. I mean,
right?
that's why we lost Inspector Deck's first album because of a flood. It's like sometimes shit like that just happens, and it's like you're like, how could there not be a backup? Well, there wasn't. You know, it's just
Exactly. So that's what ends up happening with a lot of music in the digital age. Um, I have privately, I've had conversations with people who have a bunch of his early music,
mhm.
right? And they've asked me, well, how do I go about releasing this? I say, I don't know. You know what I mean?
Talk
Like,
to the family. It seems like a good
yeah,
place to
I
start.
say, you kind of know what you need to do. You
Right.
need to just do it, but they kind of, for whatever reason, maybe feel like it's not a thing that they feel comfortable doing.
Yeah.
But I did hear a lot of his music, while I was working on the book. Now, I worked on the book from, say, 2019 to, you know, late in 22. So, it was a lot of, even those records, some of those people may not even have access to that anymore, just because it's 2 years, and 2 years in the life of the digital world is like a fucking lifetime. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? It's on hard drives that maybe they don't have anymore. you really have no idea.
It
But
is crazy how much people, even if they have extremely valuable things, will leave them like right next to like a furnace or something. Like it's crazy that like just because of the normal everyday habits of people, it's like they're just like, all right, well, you know.
yeah, well, it's like most things in life. Everything eventually goes up in smoke. You
Yes.
know what I'm saying? So, it's you have to kind of like get, um, you have to expose this stuff while you have the opportunity to. Um, Now, you know, in the case of like, say, Tupac,
Yeah.
right? Great example. There was a lot of his material came out posthumously, and then there was like nothing left,
Right.
right?
And it was like,
You
Are
know,
You Still Down? The first CD of that, bangers from front to back. And then after that, you started seeing, okay, well, that was the best stuff, you know.
actually, I think there's a new Tupac album that's getting ready to come out.
I did hear about that.
Yeah, I mean, I'm interested to see, um, what ends up coming of that.
yeah,
But even like the "Are You Still Down" stuff, right? Some of that stuff they reused on other
yeah,
albums. They kind of find ways. And then you listen. There's times when this stuff is in poor taste, right? XXX Temptation, right,
yeah,
passed away, and there wasn't really that much left over, and everything kind of got utilized.
yeah.
Similar with like Lil Peep, you
Probably
know,
Pop Smoke too.
Pop Smoke. There's not a lot of material.
Yeah,
Um, with Mac, I mean, like, you know, there are people who are super fans who have the archive. It's um, I mean, I have it, right? It's like
yeah.
600, 700 songs, right? Of shit that is not even out, right? And you listen to this shit and it's unbelievable. You know what I'm saying? Some of this stuff is like,
It's like it's almost you boggle your mind. Why wouldn't you share this? It's because it's like it's great. No,
well,
not you, but I mean him. You know.
you understand you understand why it never came out because some of it is so raw and
Oh
so
yeah,
it's literally the exact thing I was talking about earlier about the specifics. This stuff is so specific that if it were to have come out, it would have been there would have been a lot of alarms being rung, because it's just very these things are like diary entries, and
mentioning particular maybe other famous people that he knew, stuff like that.
not really so much name dropping, but more so like just like what I would call life dropping, right?
Oh,
Like and you look at some of the time periods in which the stuff was made, you're like, yo, this is heavy shit, man. This is a dude dealing with something, you know.
how does that with unreleased songs when you're writing the book and you're listening to unreleased songs? How can that influence it? Because knowing that the person reading it doesn't have the context of hearing those songs, like how could that influence your writing?
It's a great question. I think you kind of are looking for in a work of journalism, you're looking for in some sense you're looking for other people to tell your story for you, right? um, because the minute you start telling it, right, unless it's really based on something real, it can start to look a little funny. You have to either write from your research or you have to write, from something that somebody told you. So in that context, you would kind of like you listen to some of this music from this time period and then you try to find interviews from that you did where you have people talking about that time period, right? And you kind of start putting it together. You're like, oh, they're talking about April 2014. Oh shit, like this song is from the spring of 2014. And you can kind of see actually a lot of like interconnectivity. You're like, yeah, this sounds like
Yeah.
exactly what this person's talking about. Now, a lot of those interviews were done before I had access to that music. Um, so if anything, the music was actually just supporting something that was told to me. And when you're
Almost
doing
like
interviews,
second sourcing it, you know?
yeah, yes, it was like in some ways it was like proving something that because when you're
Yeah.
interviewing people, that's their
Right.
interpretation
It's their filter.
of something, right? And so you don't know if they're lying, you don't know if they're just making shit up, you don't know if they're just giving you their point of view. You want to believe they're being honest, but sometimes you need to interview four people to get one fact, right? But so I would do a lot of that. I would have like a lot of interviews about the same exact shit, right? And I would have like specific projects or like dates. I'm very into like timing. Like I would kind of like isolate on certain milestones and different things like that. Sort of like we were talking about earlier with the graduating high school.
Yeah.
I would kind of like isolate on milestones and try to get somebody to open up about that. And then these interviews would be very long. Some of them would be 4 or 5 hours. So over the course of 4 or 5 hours, talking about it, they would kind of tell you in a lot of detail what was going on, and then you could kind of go back and you listen to some of the music and you say, oh yeah, this sounds like a lot like what they were talking about. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
Yeah, yeah.
Has the reaction to the book, how has the reaction to the book been? How have you found?
I mean, it's been great. Yeah, it's been
Everybody I know that's read it loved it. I've recommended it to a lot of people, and
yeah, no, it's been insane. I mean, honestly, I feel like a little, funny, like talking like that
yeah.
because that's not really how I talk, But
Well, it feels like you did him a very fair job too, and it's I think that it wasn't. You're talking about somebody who passed away from drugs a few years ago. There's a lot of different ways somebody could read that book. It's obviously it's unauthorized. A lot of you can spin that word however you want. But it's like I think you're pretty fair in this book, and I think the fans I would appreciate that.
yeah, well, I mean, listen, in all honesty, you know, there were some comments made, you know, about the book by his family, to get people to not read it, right? That's just a fact.
Yeah, which probably helped more people read it, but that's the way the life goes.
I mean, you would think that, but it actually didn't work that way, right? It did not work. It actually worked in reverse,
Right.
right? I think a lot of his fans did stay away from it, right? They did not support it. They are still, some of them, not supportive of it. And you know what? That's okay,
Yeah,
right?
and give him time.
Yeah, I actually, I didn't necessarily write the book, for fans. I didn't necessarily write the book for anybody's family. I didn't even write the book for me. I wrote the book for the truths, right?
Right.
For history, for, I, dude, I'm sitting in front of a bookshelf. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
everybody who sat here and spent time on one of these things, they tried to capture something, a moment or something, and put it on paper. And writing is thinking. So if you spend 3 years thinking about something, you know, the chances are you're not half-assing it. You
Right.
know what I'm saying?
You captured moments in this too that would have been lost to time. Even to your point about songs being on hard drives, it's like our memories are on hard drives, our brains, and it's like this. Unfortunately, people disappear all the time, and it's like this was a time to capture some of these stories.
I mean, even with the stuff with the blogs, nobody's going to remember that he had a blog. Who's
Right.
going to go look for that?
People barely
right?
remember it a TV show.
Yeah,
It's like,
exactly. Nobody's gonna go. Nobody's gonna go searching for that. It's
right,
other than like some diehard fans, right, who are gonna go searching for it and say, "Hey, let me see it." Unless MTV unearths that and puts it on TV, it's
right.
gone. It's no longer gonna exist. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? Like it's a wrap. It's finished.
It's
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 lost.
basically research material if somebody wants to make a documentary is essentially what it becomes.
Exactly. Which hopefully is done.
Yeah.
But
I'm sure it's only a matter of time.
but like in terms of that, to answer that question, it was like, it was very gratifying to have experienced a backlash to something that did not even exist yet, because the
Yeah.
book was kind of boycotted before it even came out. Then people got it and they were like, what the fuck? This thing is totally not what we thought it was going to be.
Yeah.
And they
Well,
went
like
and sort of,
Dogma with Kevin Smith.
yeah, well, I mean, that's when it kind of backfires,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
I mean, it's like, to see people evangelize for something that they were told to hate is really gratifying.
Yeah.
I to this day, nobody's more self-critical than I am. Right? There are things I see in the book that I know I could have done a better job of. There are typos that drive me crazy. Right? I'm still like Mac Miller himself, obsessing over mistakes, right?
Yeah.
In the book. And I'm like, I wish I did that better. I wish I did that better. The only way I can actually continue to live is to sort of create a little distance between it and myself
Mhm.
and just say, it is what it is. It exists, and like I'm glad that people are still, checking it out. The truth is most books, they have a very short shelf life. The publishing industry, is very first week sales, second week sales, third week sales driven. It's not unlike any other industry, right? It's like you do well in the first week and then your shit just disappears or not.
Right.
And this book is out, week after week is outselling books that are coming out this week.
Wow.
It's
Get
it's
that dark side of the moon type thing. Never quite falling off Billboard.
yeah, it was never a bestseller, but it's been a consistent seller, and people, outside of sales, right, which don't really matter that much to me. It's like people like yourself who want to like
Yeah.
talk about it. In fact, we're talking, but I'm doing another podcast like later in the week, about this, right?
Yeah.
And the book came out 2 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So
Yeah.
I don't know anybody really that does this and is doing interviews about shit they did 2 years ago. The books kind of have a short shelf life, and yeah, just that in and of itself is sort of makes me feel good. There were people who just from a sales standpoint, to bring it back to that, you know, there were books that sold a lot more copies in the first 4 weeks, but there have not been as many books have. I've sold more books over that period of time. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And that was with people telling you people don't fucking read this book. You
Right.
know what
It's
I'm
a testament
saying?
to word of mouth because that's the only way that happens is that like because the press isn't going to stick with you that whole time. It's not like they're going to keep reviewing it every week. It's like it's people like me telling other people and they're telling other people.
The truth is, I always wanted to do something like kids, right? While I was working on this book, I actually went. That was actually when we talk about milestones and things you kind of hook something around. That was actually the thing that I was thinking about. I was like, I actually really want to do something that is just passed around. You
Yeah.
know,
It has a
and
life.
I was rereading something, you know, not that long ago that I sent to a teacher that I had when I was in a writing program a couple of years ago. He asked me, "What are your goals? Right? What do you want to do with your writing career?" And I said, "My goal is to write something that's not popular, but that people pass around to each other. You know what I'm saying? And this was before I was even doing this book, right?
Yeah.
I literally wrote that to him. I was like, "What the fuck are the odds that I would say that?"
Wow.
Because at that point in time, this book was not even in my realm of thinking.
Yeah.
And I was just like, "Yeah, I would like to write something that's not popular, that doesn't sell, and that's just people pass around, like." I always was, in awe of like books like the 48 Laws of Power, you know, shit people read in jail. Like that,
Yeah.
that's like, like, addiction books, right?
Yeah.
People who, there's a certain group of books that people who struggle with addiction read.
There's a book called The Sociopath Next Door by I think Martha Stout that I bought for at least 10 people. I think I bought it for almost every employee I've ever had in my life because it's just that's a book that no matter what it is, I'm like, gotta read this, could save your life, could save your life.
I mean, that's to me like that is the highest honor,
Yeah.
more so than having a bestseller. There's so many bestsellers, they're in the dustbin. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
that doesn't matter. What matters is
So there's a lot of
people.
pro wrestlers with bestsellers. It's like,
Exactly,
some of them are good, but not all of
exactly. Yeah, you want to read the Hulkamaniac story?
them.
Like
Or
I'm sure.
McFoley.
Yeah, I'm sure that's gonna, it's gonna sell a lot in the first week, and then it's over. Nobody's passing it on.
Yeah.
When you do something meaningful, people pass. They pay it forward, right? They say, "Yo, you got to read this." So, uh, that's just I always been into shit like that, And as much as there is a part of me that obviously wants to do things that are popular and wants to you know, have a number one record or whatever, right? The truth is, I'm much more of a niche person. My favorite movies are all things that nobody's watched. You
Yeah.
know what I'm saying? But like only a small group of aficionados. Would you rather have? I don't know what year did the Deer Hunter came out in what 78?
All right. That or
Who
Miami
knows what
Connection.
who knows what movie came out in 78? Would you rather be the Deer Hunter or whatever other bullshit topped the charts in 78?
Yeah. I'm sort of fascinated with like there's this podcast because How Did This Get Made? And they cover bad movies. They cover like a different crazy bad movie every episode. And I've watched almost all of them. There's been like 300 episodes. It's like Jason Mantzoukas, Paul Scheer, Gene Diane Rayfield. And like I'm super like obsessed with this the things that don't get forgotten to time, good ideas that like movies that have a few things that are really good that nobody remembers. Everybody's too busy being influenced by Star Wars and Indiana Jones. There's so much other stuff from those times, like Star Crash, which was like a rip off of Star Wars. But I can watch that and go, okay, if that guy made that in 77, I can make that in my basement now. It inspires you in a way that like other movies don't, in like a very tactile way. It's like the forgotten cinema and forgotten media to me is a source of endless fun.
I mean, I didn't listen to that much of it. I listened to a couple episodes. Tarantino's podcast was
Yeah.
kind of about that, which was, just sort of like isolating on something that is, basically forgotten, right? And, I think as a producer myself, like digging in the crates, you find a lot of things that people don't really, maybe it's forgotten, right?
Yeah.
You're like, how did this record even come out?
I was listening to
You
the
know?
Dollar soundtrack by Quincy Jones the other day. I'm like, I've never even heard of this movie, but it's full of this awesome old Quincy Jones music. And it's just like, where the fuck did this come from?
It's probably, yes, that's crazy. I gotta check that out.
It was at my record store, and it was like it was been on sale for like $15 forever. I'm like, today's the day. It's beautiful mint green, you know. But I don't
I
know.
have Quincy Jones' book somewhere back here, or it might be upstairs.
Fascinating, dude.
Even when you read that, you're like, this guy played on so many records. Nobody, you just know this guy. He's like Quincy Jones, but like, he's on all these like classic records beyond Michael Jackson. I mean,
Right.
I'm talking like, with super jazz legends and shit. You're like, yeah, this is kind of where I'm at with things, is like, trying to dig down deep and get that story, and that's what you try to do with the book, is right, like just try to show people a little bit more of like the meme version of what people become. And
Right.
that was really what I was alluding to a little bit earlier in terms of the inspiration, was like, when people die, right, they become a meme, right? They become like the sad Mac meme.
Right.
Here's the dude, oh, Tiny Desk,
Right.
right? They become this little moment. I
Like
mean,
Heath Ledger Joker, It's
yeah, and it's like it's a little
trivializing, maybe.
totally, man, it's totally saw this with the Grammys and fucking
Oh, were you out there a few days ago?
yeah, I was at the Grammys. Yeah, saw that with Tracy Chapman. People were like, "Whoa, look at this artist. Like, who knew about this song?" I'm like, Tracy Chapman had a whole career. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Sometimes I rhyme slow, sometimes I rhyme quick. We
Yeah,
all knew about
yeah,
that
like
song.
her career is might even be bigger than Luke Combs, right? Like,
Right.
and it was
That's
just
like saying
fascinating.
who knew about Joni Mitchell.
I mean, well, yeah, but that's kind of like the thing. It's just people don't know shit,
Yeah.
right? And even Joni Mitchell was like, people. I was in a company box, at the Grammys, so I was with a bunch of people. I might have been with like 20 people,
Mhm.
and I would say no shade to anybody that I was with, because they got their taste and I have mine, you
Right.
know. But I did not feel like people knew any of the shit that was going on. They knew like Billy Joel, you know,
That's a
which
Billy Joel crowd.
which ironically was shit I didn't know, right?
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? I was like, I don't know this Billy Joel song, um, but yeah, they didn't seem that familiar with like Joni Mitchell and stuff. And listen, I've gotten older, I just appreciate people just being into whatever the fuck they're into,
Right.
and like you're into, Luke Combs, you're into, you know, um, Dua Lipa,
Yeah.
Billy Joel, Joni Mitchell, whatever,
Oh,
you know.
I'm a huge Carpenters fan, and all my rap fans are like, my friends are like, what? And I'm like putting it on in the car, and I'm loving that shit. I'm like, I don't give a fuck.
You just gotta like what you like, and
Yeah.
then you have some respect for what other people like. I like a lot of weird shit that other people don't like, and I don't I don't mind if they don't like it, but I try to give them the grace that I would hope they give me, right?
Right.
Which is like, you like this? I mean, I think this sucks, but you do you, right? And I'll try to find some element of it that I appreciate.
Right. And the other thing
So
too is like to some degree, there are songs I like because they remind me of a moment in time, and they remind me of maybe something with my parents or something. It's like people like music for different reasons. It brings people back to different places. So it's you know
it's I mean, this is in media studies, right? There's a thing called uses and gratifications.
mhm,
And it's a theory that basically, it's pretty much the accepted theory. And it's the reason why we're all in the world we're in now, right? The algorithm world. The
mhm.
theory is that, you know, people utilize media in a way that serves them, right? They use it in a way that gratifies them.
Right. It's a soothing mechanism to some degree.
Exactly. 50 years ago,
Emotional regulation, I guess.
right? They use it for what um there's all kinds of reasons why they use it,
Right.
right? They use it to reinforce a worldview. They use it to, basically get information on a thing that they want,
Mhm.
right? They use it to, um,
You know what I use it for? I'm someone who's obsessed with jokes and laughing, and it improves my mood. I'll just put funny things on because sometimes I need to hear so many jokes an hour just to keep myself in the right mind state. I'm engaging with it, not really watching it, but it's impacting me in an insignificant way.
well, you are, a little bit of what you eat, right? So, you are the information that you consume,
Yeah.
and so, you know, what you can see now is that the way people, they gravitate to what they gravitate, and the algorithm is kind of giving them more of that. And
Yeah.
I'm somebody that, like, I understand that maybe the algorithm is not the best thing for people, but the truth is, like, that is actually serving the way people actually utilize media. So the opposite would be, sort of not a democratic way of, consuming media. It would be like, I give you my speech and you ingest it,
Right.
right? Whereas, like, the way people, really use media is they say, you know, I don't want to listen to this speech because I don't believe in what you're saying, right? And that is actually more democratic, right? So, um, you know, on the other hand, you have situations like we're in now where people get a lot of false information, and so it's a little bit of a fine line. Um, but music is kind of the same way, right? People
Yeah.
kind of they like what they like, and you just have to kind of let them like it.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, let me ask
yeah.
you one more question that kind of ties it together, and I'll let you go. I've heard a few AI Mac Miller songs, which I don't really even know where I stand on that. We'll kind of see. But have you heard any that actually that you felt were convincing, or have you heard any instances where people are trying to pass anything off as real? Or
I haven't heard anything. I don't listen to anything AI. Like, unless it's like a pretty significant, record. Like, I think there was some Tupac ones I listened to.
yeah, I would
Um,
never listen to anything more than once. I don't think, or
yeah,
probably
a
only a
buddy of
verse.
mine,
You know,
he sent me like some Beatles thing. I was just like, yeah, I'm cool. Like,
yeah,
I
it's
try to
still
use
uncanny
AI.
valley of the ear.
I try to use AI. I try to use Chat GPT. I try to use these tools, um, and I'm gonna say something kind of unpopular, but I just don't find them to be that good. Like,
Yeah,
maybe you think they're good because your standard of good is kind of low, you
right.
know. But I feel like anything I get out of Chat GPT is anything I could do myself. I've literally never asked Chat GPT for anything that I've actually used. It's just been the most basic and banal shit I've ever seen. So
Dude, I
with
I tell you though, when I want to air fry some potatoes and I need to know the right temperature, that's what I do. Use it for. That's what I
maybe
use it.
I mean, I know people who've used it to get jobs. I know people who use AI tools to make music.
Yeah.
Um, you know, I just personally, maybe I'm a dinosaur. I would love to find a real usage for it. Anything that could make my life more efficient, I will use.
Yeah.
But it's so much, it's a little bit like video for me. I would so much rather somebody just summarize a video and give me the quotes
Me
than
too.
me
As soon as I see how long it is, no matter how long it is, I think about how much time I'm going to spend on it, and I'm not interested.
Yeah, I just it's like that's what a newspaper is. They take a very big piece of information and make it short for you, and
Yeah.
they synthesize information, right? They say, somebody got killed. They go get the story. They boil it down to 300 words, and they tell you what happened,
Right.
who did it, what happened, when it happened, where it happened, how it happened, and in a best case scenario, why it happens, right?
Yeah.
Now, if you see some shit like that, you want to literally have me sit through 3 hours, to have me figure that out. It's like, I'm not doing all that work,
Yeah.
I'd rather just not even look at it. So, you know, this is a little bit how I feel with AI. So with the Mac Miller stuff, I know there are some Mac songs. I've kind of like purposely avoided listening to them, um, just because it's not real. It's
I
not
feel
real.
like even like the novelty of those are already starting to wear off because it's like the other because I heard Mac Miller rap Eminem, I heard Jim Ross from wrestling rap like John Cena, and it's like what's it for 3 or 4 of those, and I don't even listen to the whole thing. So you're like, okay, well I know what this is. Like I don't give a shit anymore. Like it's neat, yeah, it's cool. You got your computer to do that, but like it doesn't.
It's novelty, like you said,
Yeah,
right? That's exactly what it is. And it's no different to me than the guy singing "Purple Rain." right?
Yeah.
Sorry,
A
chocolate
chocolate rain. You know
chocolate
what's
rain.
funny? It's funny you say that. I was just did a song with a guy, and he's like, "Can you give me a reference for what you want on the hook?" And I sent him "Chocolate Rain." He's like, "You kidding?" I'm like, "Nope, I want Chocolate Rain." And he gave it to me, and I'm like, "Give me Chocolate Drizzle." Like, it's
It's no different. That's so funny.
a good
Uh,
song.
literally it's the only time I've actually talked about Chocolate Rain, and anybody knows what I'm talking about.
This happened like 2 weeks ago.
I usually talk about that, and they're like, "What?" That's because that's like kind of like a little bit of an insight into virality, right? When you talk about viral shit in the real world, nobody knows what you're talking about. They're
Mhm.
like, "Yo, did you see this meme?" Like,
Right.
what meme? You know what I mean? Because everyone's memes are different, you
Right.
know?
It's like
So
there's huge populations who know who Logan Paul is and huge populations who don't.
they have
Like
no
it's
they have no clue
right.
who the Paul brothers are.
Or like
None of
Ninja,
that.
it's like
Yeah, exactly. 100%. So that's kind of like how I feel about some of this AI stuff. It's like if you're dialed into that universe, you kind of know, right? And then it's a little bit of a novelty. And then, but once the novelty wears off, you know, all music and musicians who are great musicians and not karaoke style musicians who have one hit, they have some element of what they do that brings them into the real world. They go and they do a show,
yeah.
right? They have merch. They are a breathing person. They are three dimensional. Tom Petty, right, is a great example of that, right? You know, Tom Petty has so many great records, right? But if you were to just listen to the songs, you're like, yeah, this song's great. Like I can listen to this song on its own. And when you're a really great songwriter and great musician, you can make a record that exists outside of Tom Petty. The only reason why Tom Petty is who he is because he went on a road for 20 years,
Yeah.
30 years performing and going out and touching people. So unless a person can do that, the AI stuff is kind of meaningless.
Right.
And so when people send me these AI songs, of which there are many people who send them to me, I'm just like, dude, unless you're really gonna go out there and create a whole life for this AI character, you're basically wasting your time, right?
Right.
Because you need to give this a narrative. You need to give this real life. Real musicians exist outside of the song.
Yeah.
You know, yeah.
AI songs is the good use for that is if it's your kid's birthday and you want to get Grover to sing happy birthday to them. It's like that's like what a good use for like an AI song. It's like something like cute or something that might make someone's day. It's not an art, it's like it's yeah, it's a little thing that hopefully will only be a blip. But
That's a good point. I never thought it. Actually, should have done that for my kid's birthday. Had a AI version of
because
Elsa sing Happy
I
Birthday.
always think of that in terms of like these things eventually find their resting place of what like they're a ball in motion and they're gonna stop and there'll be one or two things people use them for and then it's like it's just another tchotchke on the desk of technology that we pick up every once in a while.
Like I said, I would love to find some music for it. I've tried. Anything to make life easier, I would try.
Yeah.
If I could get AI to write a book for me, I would be like, dude, fucking do this. I don't want to do this shit. You know what I'm saying? Like,
I just
it's
want the
so
Tony Stark AI where I can go like, yo, pick that thing up for me, move it over there. It's like that I'm cool with. It's like I want it to do, I want to dictate it and have it just do. I don't want it to do and have me dictate me.
Well, listen, I think we're far off from that.
Yeah,
It's
unfortunately.
at least a couple years away.
Yeah. My
You
Iron
know,
Man suit's missing a few screws, so
yes, it's going to be a while, at least 5 years.
yeah.
You never know, though. It's moving rapidly, so we'll see. It needs to be, a very basic product that you can get. Basically, you know, you should until it's built into your phone or your Apple whatever that thing is that
Yeah.
they've been selling. Unless until it's built into that, it's really it's going to take a lot of work. So but yeah, like I don't know, the Tupac hologram, was that AI?
Yeah.
I don't know. You know what I
And
mean? And
that
how
didn't,
much
I mean, those are, we haven't seen that many more of those. I mean, that yeah, people thought that was going to be the next big whatever, but like, it's just, oh, okay. It's
it didn't really pan out,
no,
So it just, history has a way of keeping what it wants and forgetting what it doesn't.
yeah,
And, so we'll see where AI. It's not new technology. You know, AI is old. I was just watching something. Can't remember what it was. I wish I could.
it
It would make this what I'm about to say a lot more interesting.
wasn't the film AI by Spielberg and Kubrick, was it?
No, it was way before that. I mean, it was like from the '80s, and they were talking about AI.
Right.
And it was like, yeah, the AI developed this, and it's like these things have been around forever. They get popular, and it's like crypto. It's like,
Yeah.
yeah, everyone gets obsessed with it, and then it just disappears.
Yeah. Ebbs and flows. So cool, man. All right. I could talk to you forever. I mean, it sounds like there's tons of fascinating stuff you did we didn't even touch on, but I mean, like,
Well,
yeah, like,
let me know, man, when you're ready for part two.
yeah, I'd love to, man. Like, go out, check out this book, Most Dope. And I can't wait to see what you're doing next because I imagine the way you talked about, this process of this book and, what the response meant to you. I imagine, your next project's going to be a wise choice, some sort of good investment of your time. So I'm looking forward to seeing whatever that is.
Yeah, well, I'm definitely working, and there's things, gestating. Just
When the time's right.
yeah, you just have to. The thing is, these every time you do one, you kind of die a little bit, even briefly for a couple of years, and you have to kind of pick and choose what you're going to die for.
You're right.
So it's when you get into it and you get really into it, and it's heavy, so you have to, like, you got to really be sure what you're doing. You know what I'm saying?
Definitely. Yep.
Yeah.
I definitely agree. Yeah. So cool, man. It's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much.